Hey everyone, it's Nick from RevUp Dental. Happy New Year, happy 2024. I hope you guys had a great holiday season. So today I want to talk about, probably one of the most important topics for 2024, how to build a really good dental website. So how to build a website that is actually going to get the phone to ring. It's going to get a lot more patients through the door. I think most dentists these days realize that, if you want to get more patients, you're probably not going to do that in 2024 using flyers or radio ads or newspaper ads or anything traditional like that. So most dentists, today realize that, your patients are probably going to find you online. Just look at your waiting room. Most of your patients are not sitting there like browsing through catalogs, right? They're sitting on their phone, they're checking Facebook, they're going on Google. So that's where you really need to be if you want to drive more patients in 2024. So today I want to talk about, what do you need in a good dental website in 2024? What are some common misconceptions that dentists have, where they end up spending a lot of time and money in building something that doesn't really work, which leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of money down the drain. What actually does work, what are the kinds of things you should be doing on your website, what's the type of content you should be creating, and what kind of content can actually hurt your website, what can actually detract patients or push patients away, and they might end up going to your competitors because of it, because it's also a really important topic. So let's start off with the main sort of debate that we hear all the time, even today. So should you build a templated website, or should you build something that's custom designed from the get-go, like a fully custom website? So for most of RevUp's history, we've kind of focused on going down the line of more templated design. And people who don't know any better, they kind of think that if you're using templates, it's cheaper, it's low quality, it's low effort, but it's kind of the opposite. You end up, by using a templated design, you often are able to build a much better website for a client that gets much better results and ends up costing the dentist, a fraction of the price compared to building a fully custom website. So at RevUp, we've built hundreds of dental websites, all the way from templated designs, or taking a template and just modifying it and making it look a little bit different, all the way to fully building custom websites from scratch, from just like a design, and we program the whole thing from scratch. So we've got a lot of experience doing it every single different way. And we feel that, often a templated design is just going to give you a better bang for your buck. Think about it like this. So if you go into a Starbucks, whether you go into a Starbucks in Toronto or New York or Chicago or New Zealand, I'm in New Zealand right now. So whichever one you go into, they all look very similar. If I was to be able to teleport you into like different Starbucks across the world, you'd probably have a really hard time figuring out which country you're in, because most of them look very identical. Now, think about it for a second. The Starbucks do that because it's cheap, or it's low effort, or it's, like low quality. No, of course not, right? Like, they do that because they've spent a lot of time and money and effort trying to perfect a particular, store design that just works very, very well. So that no matter where they open up, a cafe, they're going to see really good results. They're able to create a very high level experience for, any person that walks through the door. Now, imagine for a second if you went to the executives of Starbucks and you told them, guys, you're doing it all wrong. You need to make every store more unique. Like the stores in Canada versus the US versus Singapore, they all need to be different because there's different clientele there. I went to your stores and honestly, they all look exactly the same. What do you think those executives are gonna say to you, right? It's a pretty ridiculous idea. Like, when you follow a template, it doesn't mean that you're getting lower quality. It often means you're getting a higher quality product. Somebody's spent a lot of time figuring out what works, and they're trying to sell you a working solution rather than trying to experiment with your money. It's the same thing when you're talking about website templates. Like, there's companies that have spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to figure out what works, and they're purely trying to sell a working solution. Whereas if you're going down the line of, let's build something custom, custom doesn't always mean better. Oftentimes you're actually paying for somebody to experiment on your dollar. And sometimes what they build works, and sometimes what they build ends up, not really achieving any sort of results. And ultimately, as the dentist, you're the one paying the bill, you're going to be the one left holding the bag. So, don't think that just because you're building something custom, it's actually better. Oftentimes, if you go down the sort of more templated route, the proven route, you're getting a much better, much more finessed product than you would otherwise. So this leads me to my next point. A lot of dentists who build a new website, the sort of problem they end up running into is they sort of look at this website more from an aesthetic standpoint. So they're kind of evaluating whether they like the website, whether they think it's a good website based on how visually appealing it may be. And I mean, visual appeal does matter. Obviously, you want a website that's clean and nice and professional, but you have to keep in mind that Google doesn't evaluate design, right? They don't particularly care, nor does their algorithm have any sort of way to sort of sense how pretty is something. And if you think about it, your patients don't really care about that stuff either. I mean, I'm not picking a dentist based on how nice their homepage is designed or how nice their welcome banner on the on the website when it loads, how nice that looks. I don't particularly care about that. So a lot of dentists will spend a ton of time and money and effort on trying to build something that looks really pretty and kind of lose sight of the fact of this isn't necessarily what Google cares about, and it's probably not what your patients care about either. And they sort of like neglect the other important elements, which I'll touch upon a little bit later, in favor of just building something that they think looks very modern, looks very sleek, looks very professional. And they don't realize that most people don't really care, right? Like you're not going to get better results because your website looks prettier. So one of the things that comes up all the time when we talk to dentists, they say, well, I'm okay to do a templated design, but the fear I have is, I've been told by a lot of people that if I have duplicate content or if I'm just using the same template that other dentists are using, that Google is going to penalize me. So am I not better off to build something that's custom or something that's unique or create completely unique content? And for the most part, like having duplicate content or using a template doesn't really impact your SEO ranking all that much, because Google looks at hundreds of different factors. So it's not a question of if your website is unique or your content is unique, it's going to rank better. Google's trying to figure out how useful is your content. How much value does it drive for people? How much time do people spend on your website? How much value are they getting from spending time on your website? Are you able to answer the questions that they have? Are you able to basically give them value? So even if you have a website that is fully unique and your design is unique, your content is unique, it doesn't mean it's good, right? It doesn't mean the content is actually useful. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have, 2 dental offices. So one of the offices takes the time and spends a lot of money to build something completely custom, like from the ground up, completely custom design, unique content, all of that jazz. And you have a second practice who follows more of a templated approach. They still customize a lot of stuff on there, but they start from sort of like a baseline template that, there might be dozens or hundreds of other dentists that are using sort of a similar base structure. What Google's going to look at is, how much time do people spend on each website? How many pages do they visit? What the bounce rate is, like all of these sort of engagement metrics. And if the templated site, has better content, meaning it's more useful, it's more engaging, it's more in depth, there's a lot more there to absorb, and people are spending a lot longer on that site versus the first website, which is fully unique, but it's just not as engaging. The second website with the duplicate content or the one that was based from a template is still going to outrank the one that's unique, right? So again, there's many factors that come into play. So you shouldn't think that, it's important to make things unique just for the sake of being unique. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of dental offices across US and Canada. Nobody is going to notice whether your website is built from a template or whether it's completely unique, nor do people even care anyways. Okay, so I'm not saying that building a custom website is a waste of money and it's always better to go with the template. We end up building a lot of custom websites ourselves as well, and there are situations where it actually might warrant spending the money to build something from scratch, something from the ground up that's very unique to what your practice does. So there's 2 situations where I think this actually does make sense. Number one is if you are running a practice that offers very specific types of dental treatment. So if you're a practice that only does orthodontics, if you only do implants, if you only do LANAP, or if you're only doing any sort of specialized service, it can sometimes be better to build a unique website that really focuses on just that procedure and explains it from different angles, and it has custom features that sort of explain, how that procedure works, and you go into a lot more detail, because then you will come across as more of an expert in that field, right? Like if you only offer one service, you can't just have a website with a single page. You might want to build, 5, 6, 7 different landing pages talking about 5, 6, 7 different aspects of dental implants, like small diameter implants, all on 4, implant supported dentures. Like you might actually want to build content and design special features on your website that better explain the options you have with implants. Now, another situation where I would say it does warrant spending the money to build a custom website is any dentist that spent a lot more money and effort on their sort of branding, on the design of their practice, on their style, on their aesthetics. So some offices do, invest quite heavily in building, a really good brand. Like when you go to their practice, the front of their practice has a very beautiful sign that they spent a lot of money on. They just didn't put up some vinyl sign in the window. Like they didn't cheap out on it. They built something that looks really nice and very unique. When you walk inside their practice, all the color scheme matches the outside. Their branding of their, pamphlets, their business cards, all the material they hand out, it matches that sort of style. So if you've invested heavily in like having a really beautiful design, like a very unique design, then yeah, it actually does make sense to spend a bit more money and build a website that isn't so templated and cookie cutter. But for most dental offices, generally speaking, you will just get a better bang for your buck when you're following a template, because again, you're actually getting a much higher quality product. Someone spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure out what works. So usually the right approach is you start with a template, you start with something that's like a very strong, well-designed foundation, and you sort of like add some customization to it on top of that. So next time you hear, it's a templated website, don't think it's low quality. Generally, by following a good standard, like a good base model template, you're probably going to end up building a website that is significantly better. It attracts a lot more patients. It's more SEO friendly. And ultimately, it's going to probably cost you a lot less money too. Okay, so then what type of content do you create? Do you just copy the content off other dental websites? If it doesn't matter, if you can use templated content, is that all you need to do? No, there is some types of content that you definitely want to create for your website that is unique and is going to have a huge impact on your SEO. So the first thing is, you want to focus on gathering a lot of Google reviews. I mean, most people today, they're not going to pick a dentist based on who's got the nicer looking website. So again, let me give you 2 examples. Let's say you have one dental office that has a very beautiful website. They spend $10,000 on building a completely custom, just absolutely very sleek, modern website. And you have another one that's like a little bit dated. Maybe it's, comes across as, a little cookie cutter. But the second website, the cookie cutter one, has 500 reviews on Google, from patients saying, they had a positive experience at that practice. And the one that's like very unique, very aesthetically pleasing website only has 50 reviews. Who do you think most people are going to pick? They're not going to pick the one that looks prettier. They're going to pick the one with more social proof, right? They're going to pick the one that has a higher review count. So a lot of dentists spend so much time and money trying to like build a really fancy website, forgetting the fact that you could have a really crappy looking website, but if you have more reviews than all your competition, most people are just going to call you anyways. Another really good thing to focus on is patient testimonial videos. These are, just as powerful, if not more powerful than reviews, because when someone comes to your website, again, let's use 2 examples. You have one dentist with a super sleek website. They spend a lot of money on like very customized design, very beautiful aesthetics. And you have an older looking website, maybe looks like it hasn't been updated in a couple of years, but on that older website, you've got a wall filled with patient testimonial videos and people going on camera and saying how amazing this dentist is and how great this office is and how wonderful the staff is and how they had amazing dental care and they just love this office. Which one do you think most people are going to pick? Obviously, they're going to go with the one that has, stronger social proof. So you can create patient testimonial videos using just a cell phone. So as you can see in some of these examples, these are all videos shot with a cell phone where, they just interview their patients and they ask them questions like, how was your experience at our office? What made you consider Invisalign? What was the experience like doing Invisalign at our office? How do you feel about it now that we finished the procedure? How are you happy with your smile? Just letting patients kind of like talk about their experience is really powerful content. It's going to make you rank higher on Google, and it's going to engage the patients that come to your website and lead to a much higher conversion rate as well. Another really good thing to create is educational videos as well. So there's a lot of dental websites out there that, again, they look really pretty, really sleek, really professional, but when you go to one of the services like veneers or implants or dentures or any of the service pages, there's not really much content there. I mean, it's just basically a paragraph describing what dental implants are. And patients looking for dental implants, they know what dental implants are. They're not going to your website to figure out like what this means. They don't want a dictionary definition. What they're looking for on your website is, why should I pick you, right? So one of the best ways to do that is if they go to that page and you've got, like a simple video on there where you just cover common questions like, how does Invisalign work? Is it better than braces? Or, is it comparable? Or what are the pros and cons between traditional orthodontic treatment versus Invisalign or clear aligners? Or maybe you talk about, does it hurt? How much does it cost? Talking about cost is another really important thing to put on your website. A lot of dentists sort of like shy away from this because they've been taught by, many consultants and marketing companies that, if you talk about price, then it's going to scare the person away. So you should just promote that, come in for a free consultation. But what this will come across as is that you're just kind of hiding the information, right? So by talking about costs, especially if you do it in these educational videos where you talk about the procedures, talk about what it costs, you will come across as more honest, more trustworthy, because people, that are looking for costs, they're not necessarily price shoppers. They just need to budget, right? They need to have a, basic understanding of what they're getting themselves involved in, what this thing is actually going to cost. So it's not a ridiculous question. And by dodging these questions and not sort of answering them on your website, you will, come across as just being disingenuous. So as you can see in some of the examples on our websites, we spend a lot of time kind of breaking down what things cost. And most of the time, I mean, you can't give someone an exact price anyways. Obviously, what something costs is going to be based on many different factors, but you can break things down and talk about what might influence costs. If I'm looking for implants, it really depends on, the overall health of my mouth. I mean, if you have a patient that has like very healthy teeth, very healthy gums, maybe, he just got into a bar fight the other night and someone punched him in the mouth and he lost the tooth, that patient is going to be a lot easier to work with, and hence the dental implant costs are going to be lower than if you're dealing with a patient who hasn't been brushing their teeth in 20 years, they haven't been to a dentist, they have, serious perio problems. That second patient is probably going to cost a lot more to fix their mouth. Another thing you can talk about is the materials that you use. Obviously, the cost of implants is going to be determined by what kind of the quality of the materials that we put into your mouth. So you can talk about how, some dentists, they go down the path of trying to find the cheapest implant. And that's how you achieve a much lower price. But, think about it from your perspective. If you get an implant put in, and at first you're very happy because the price is low, you got a better deal than every other dental office that you called. But what happens if 2 years later you're at a Thanksgiving dinner and your tooth falls out of your mouth? You're probably not going to be happy. So by talking about these things, by talking about costs, instead of trying to dodge the question, you can build a lot of trust and rapport with patients, because you can kind of break down what goes into the cost, sort of rough ranges, and you also just will naturally also get rid of people that just can't afford it. Because what's the point of having somebody come in for a consultation only to be shocked at what it actually costs to do that procedure, and then they just waste your time, your staff's time? That's not a positive experience for them or for you either. So talking about costs is like a really great content to have on your website. Lastly, really good content to have is awards. So if you've won any sort of like Reader's Choice Award, 3 best rated, most towns and cities out there and across North America, they run some sort of Reader's Choice Award, some sort of like local, best dentist, best carpenter, best whatever, and oftentimes these are easy contests to win because most dentists don't really put in any kind of effort into talking to their patients, asking them for them to vote for their practice. So if you just put a little bit of elbow grease, you can often win a lot of these awards, and having those badges on the website, builds a lot of trust with people. Same thing when you have any sort of like associations or badges, if you belong to any sort of like cosmetic dentistry association or the ADA or things like that. Even if this is something that most dentists belong to, I mean, by just having those badges on your website, it builds trust, right? Because people don't necessarily know what these badges mean, but it looks authentic. It looks like you have better credentials or you're sort of like a better dentist than maybe the competitor down the street. Okay, so now let's talk about content that probably will hurt your website, right? Content that we often see dentists put on their website that they don't realize, like, this actually lowers your conversion rate. It will turn away patients, or it will, reduce the chance that, someone wants to call you. It might rub people the wrong way. So number one, I would see a lot of dentists that have very long bios of, about who they are and what they like, and, their family and their pets and where do they like to go hiking, and, all kinds of things like that. I don't care about that. Your patients don't care about that. Like, if I'm looking for a new dentist, I don't really care about, how you like to sail or how you like to climb mountains, or how, like that's not really going to necessarily connect with me. So what I'm looking for, and what most patients are looking for when they're picking a dentist, is they want to see their sort of educational background, their credentials. You want to keep it sort of short and sweet. Having like a huge bio just will come off like you're really boastful. So just talk about your educational background, your experience, and sort of keep a lot of that fluff out. Like, I've seen people talk about how, they love hiking on the weekends, they have a golden retriever, they've got 2 kids, and, they like to go to Disney World land together. Like, it's just this kind of stuff that doesn't matter. Like, it's just kind of fluff, and it gets in the way because, again, most patients are looking at, why should I pick you? And I'm not going to pick you based on whatever hobbies you have. I'm going to pick you based on if I think you are, a very experienced, very talented dentist. Okay, so the next sort of problem we see with dental websites is the content is a little bit too technical. And we used to get a lot of pushback in the beginning because, we'd create an Invisalign landing page, a page for veneers or something like that. And dentists would come back and say, well, the way you describe this isn't technically correct. Like, actually, this is the correct medical term of what this thing is called. They would sort of like try to finesse the content in a way that it may make more sense to a dentist who's reading it, or somebody who has a lot of dental knowledge, but to your average patient that doesn't really know anything about dentistry, they end up making content that it's too technical. I don't really understand what I'm reading, and sometimes it gets to the point where the patient gets more confused by reading the content. Like, I thought I just need a crown or a cap, and you're talking about all these terms I don't really understand, and it sounds really complicated, and they start to second guess themselves. So, when you're building any kind of content for a dental website, you have to remember, like, it's not, you as the dentist might find it very simplistic, or you might find that, like, well, technically it's not exactly how it works, right? But if you go down this rabbit hole of trying to finesse everything to be like, something that your colleagues would be proud of, you're going to end up creating content that doesn't resonate with your patients. It might make sense to you and other dentists, but it's not very engaging to your average patient. Okay, next up, and one of my favorites, don't put really gross looking, really gory looking before and after photos. So I think most people kind of know what I'm talking about here. There's a lot of dental websites where the dentist will take these like really, kind of like bad lit photos where, it's a patient's mouth, and sometimes you have like a, sort of like a black line across the eyes. It looks like you're staring at a dead body in a morgue or something. And these types of photos, they really turn people off, because from the dentist's perspective, they think, if the patient can just see the amazing work I do, like, look at these really horrible cases with this patient came in with like a completely bombed out mouth, and look how amazing their teeth looked after I got to work on them. That's not really the message they get. They end up seeing something that really turns them off. And I've also seen cases where there's so many of these extreme examples that patients start to think, oh, maybe this dentist is like specializes in people that are like crack addicts or something, where they're missing all their teeth. I only have a small problem. I only have a little tooth gap. I think this dentist just does extreme cases, because everything I'm seeing on the website is just like really horrible photos. I just need a dentist that, can just fix this minor little problem. So again, you end up alienating your patients, because, you're putting something that to you as a dentist might be impressive, but they're not seeing what you're seeing. They're not going to look at that picture and, marvel at your clinical skills. All they're going to see is something that's gross, that's off-putting. So if you're going to do any kind of before and after photos, generally what you want to do is feature a picture that's like full-faced. It's well lit. Think like Instagram photos, portrait photos, where even in the before photo, the patient looks wonderful. They look great. They look like a human being. They don't look like a body. But in the after photo, after you whiten their teeth or you straighten their teeth, yes, they do look a little bit better. They do look nicer. It is noticeable. But the patient looks great even in the before photo too, right? Those are the photos that kind of resonate with people, because then they can sort of project themselves onto that patient and say, oh, I see how, I can look a lot better if I, do this treatment. But don't put photos that almost are like clinical documentation. I mean, you can take those photos for your own, sort of like documentation, but these are not photos that belong on the website. Okay, and lastly, and I touched upon this a little bit earlier, having just very generic content. So there's a lot of websites that we look at where, they look aesthetically very pleasing, the colors are nice, the images are really nice, but if you were to click on any of the pages, like you go to the veneers page or the implants page, there's just not much there. There's not much substance. It's basically just a paragraph saying, this is what veneers are, or this is how they work, and give us a call. And that's about it. So when you're creating content, one way to beef up a lot of these pages is just have a frequently asked questions section, right? So think about all the questions that, people have asked you, when they've done a consultation. Like for veneers, how long do they last? Do they look real? Are they gonna like wear away with time? If they're looking for implants, people will have questions like, are implants better than dentures? Is it worth the extra expense? How do they feel? Do they feel better? Do they feel like natural teeth? Do they look like natural teeth? If I have a single implant in my mouth, does it look weird? Are people gonna tell like that there's something off with that tooth? Think of all the questions you've gotten over time from your patients. Those are really good questions to answer on your website. Again, ideally you do this in a video format, because in video format, people get a chance to like virtually meet you, right? It's almost like they're talking to you face to face. It's the next best thing. But if you're, a little bit camera shy and you don't want to do that, so a good alternative is to, make sure you answer a lot of common questions that people have. And again, don't shy away from things like costs, and don't shy away from the negatives of certain procedures, right? Like it's okay to talk about how, hey, if you get implants, maybe one of the downsides is, it takes a lot of time to heal, or it's a bit more painful than doing dentures. But in the end, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So you'll earn a lot more trust with people if you, talk about the good and the bad, and you give them a more unbiased opinion, rather than if they feel like you're trying to make everything sound great and it's going to be easy when, it might not be, right? So by having more in-depth content and, on a landing page like Invisalign implants, things like that, you need more than just a little paragraph that says, yeah, this is what this is, and if you want any more information, give us a call. Okay, so that wraps it up. I hope you found this video useful. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also check us out at www.revupdental.com. And also, if there's any other topics you guys want to learn more about, whether it's SEO or Google Ads or training your staff or pretty much just about anything, leave us a comment down below and about what kind of content you'd like to learn more about, and we'll look at creating those videos for you guys in the future. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.